Hey guys, Shaun here. Today I'll be profiling my Buster Blader deck. This deck is a pure Buster Blader, doesn't run any dogmatic stuff with it. It's mainly a control deck, so yeah, let's get into it. Okay, so for the Buster Blader monsters, I run a double Buster Blader and then one Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordsman. So regular Buster Blader gains 500 attack and defense for each Dragon type monster your opponent controls and in their graveyard. And so that's pretty good against Dragon Link, but the main idea of this deck is to turn all your opponent's monsters into dragons and then get the boost from Buster Blader. The Destruction Swordsman, basically his effect is, if a monster is destroyed while he is on the field, you can equip that monster from your opponent's graveyard to him, and you can send that monster equipped to him to the grave to destroy all monsters your opponent controls with that type. So if you're fighting against, let's say, heroes for example, you destroy a hero monster, equip it to your Buster Blader, and then you can destroy that equip card to destroy all your opponent's warrior type monsters. So it can be very good against decks that use all the same type of monster. Some decks run double Destruction Swordsman, but I think in this deck, one is good enough. So for the main searcher in the deck, triple Buster Whelp. When he's normal summoned, he searches any one of your Destruction Sword cards. He's level 1 tuner, so he can be good for your going into your synchros. And also, if you have a Buster Blader in your hand, you can tribute him to special summon Buster Blader from your hand. That doesn't come up very much, but it can be useful in some cases. Next up, one Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. This is your main way of locking your opponent out of the extra deck. If he's equipped to one of your monsters, your opponent just cannot summon from the extra deck. And there are many ways you can get him equipped to your Buster Blader monsters to lock down your opponent. Next up for an extender, triple Tenyi Spirit Adhara. So he's level 1 tuner. You can special summon from your hand if you control no effect monsters. So you're mainly going to activate that effect when you control no monsters at all. He's a good way to go into your links. So if you summon him, summon one of your Buster Whelps, then you can link off into your Protector Whelp. So he's just really good to get out. Next up for the hand traps, just triple Droll and Lockbird. You can also run Effect Veiler. The main reason you run so many level 1s in this deck is because we play Where Arf Thou and Jack in the hand, those that will search out level 1 monsters. So this is a good hand trap to have. It just shuts down your opponent's turn basically. Effect Veiler is good as well because it's a tuner, so in weird cases you can synchro with him. I think Droll is better than Effect Veiler because this deck already negates your opponent's effects, so Droll just stops them from being able to do anything on their turn to stop you from negating all their effects. So I think Droll is just a better card to have. Okay, next up, Dark Magician and Apprentice Illusion Magician. This might seem a bit weird, but we do play Dark Paladin. So Apprentice Illusion Magician is a free special summon, and she just searches your Dark Magician. That's it for the monsters. We'll go into the spells now. Okay, for spells now, triple Where Arf Thou. So Where Arf Thou, if you control a level 1 monster, you can add one level 1 monster from your deck to your hand. However, if you do not normal summon that monster during the turn you activate this card, you take 2000 damage. It's better to search off your card at risk of taking the damage, because 2000 is not too much. Next up, double Jack in the Hand. So Jack in the Hand, you reveal 3 level 1 monsters from your deck. Your opponent adds one of them to your hand, you add one of them to your hand, and the last one gets shuffled into the deck. So although it might seem like a bad idea to give your opponent a monster, most of the time they can't really do anything with the monsters you give them. They'll just be giving your Buster Whelp, your Dragon Buster, your Tenyi Spirit Adhara, or if you're feeling risky, you can give them a Droll and Lockbird. But usually, by the time you activate this card, Droll won't be a problem for you. You'll have already gotten all the cards you need, so even if they Droll you, it doesn't really matter. Okay, next up for the fusion cards, Instant Fusion, Destruction Swordsman Fusion, and the Magicalized Fusion. Instant Fusion we just use to go into our Relinquished Fusion monster. What we can do with that card as well is, since it's a level 1 monster, we can use Where Arf Thou once we summon him, so that we can search for our main starter. Okay, Destruction Swordsman Fusion, it's basically a super poly for your Buster Blader Fusion monster. The main idea of this deck is to turn all your opponent's monsters to dragon types. So if you use Destruction Swordsman Fusion, you can use your opponent's dragon type monsters to fuse into your Buster Blader Fusion monster, which can be pretty good. Also, if it's in the grave, you can discard a card to add it back to your hand. And discarding a card can be very helpful if you have some of the traps in your hand that you need to get to the graveyard to activate their effects. Magicalized Fusion, you can use it to get out Dragoon, but in this deck we use it to get out Dark Paladin. Okay, for the one-offs, Foolish Burial, 1/1, Monster Reborn, and Call by the Grave. Foolish Burial, you can send any one of your monsters from your deck to the grave. This can be helpful setting up your fusions. You can send your Dragon Buster Destruction Sword to the grave so that you can get him onto one of your monsters the next turn. So 1/1 just gets out pretty much any one of your monsters. Monster Reborn is Monster Reborn, just a free special summon. So Call by the Grave just stops your opponent from interrupting you. This deck is not very combo based, so it doesn't matter too much, but you do want to secure your plays so that you can lock your opponent the next turn. Okay, that's it for the spells. We're going to the traps now. Alright, this is a trap heavy deck because the Buster Blader traps are very good. We run triple Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. Basically, for cost, you'll send a Buster Blader monster and a Destruction Sword card from your deck to the grave to special summon your Buster Dragon from your extra deck. Your Buster Dragon gets destroyed on the next end phase after you activate this card, so it stays around for like 2 turns, which can be very helpful. It also, if it's in the grave, you can banish it to protect all your Destruction Sword cards from being destroyed that turn. The main Destruction Sword card you'll be sending to the grave using Prologue will be your Destruction Sword Memories. On the field, the effect is you can discard 1 card, special summon a Buster Blader monster from your deck, but the main use of this is when it's in the graveyard, you can banish it along with fusion material to bring out your Buster Blader fusion monster. So this just combos off very well. It's very consistent and it's just a very good play to go into. Next up, 1 Destruction Sword Flash. So if you control a fusion Buster Blader monster, you can banish all monsters your opponent controls. Which we only run 1 because you can search it. It also doesn't come up very often, because usually if you have your Buster Lock going on, you won't need to banish your opponent's monsters. It's actually detrimental to you because your Buster Blader fusion monster gains attack for all the Dragon type monsters your opponent controls. So if you banish them all, you're not going to get any boost from that, but it can be very important in certain matchups. Also, if it's in the grave, you can banish it from the graveyard to negate and destroy a card or effect that targets one of your Buster Blader monsters. Next up, triple Trap Tricks. So Trap Trick, you banish 1 normal trap from your deck to be able to set that same card from your deck, and you can activate it that turn. So this is basically another copy of all your trap cards in the deck, which is very handy. And to end it off here, triple Heavy Storm Duster. This is your main way of getting rid of your opponent's back row. You can search it off Trap Tricks, and it's just a really good card to have. And finally, double, there can only be 1. When you have your Buster Lock up, this card is just, it's game over. Your opponent can't summon anything because all their monsters will be Dragon types. And you only need a Warrior type and a Dragon type monster on the field to have your Buster Lock up. So if you activate this card when you have your Buster Lock up, it's pretty much game over. Okay, onto the extra deck now. Okay, to begin with, double Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. So basically, this is your main fusion monster to go into. He gains 1000 attack and defense for each Dragon type monster on your opponent's field and in their graveyard. All your opponent's Dragon type monsters get turned to defense mode and their effects are negated. Also, Dragon type monsters in your opponent's possession can activate their effects. So if you're ever to use a Dragon type monster's effect from your hand, your opponent wouldn't be able to activate that effect. This card is very important with your Buster Dragon, because your Buster Dragon turns all your opponent's monsters to Dragon type. So their monsters will be turned to Dragon type, you'll negate all their effects, and you'll get a big attack boost. The only problem is he cannot attack directly, but that hardly matters because his attack will just be so high, and he does piercing damage. So you can usually just kill off piercing damage. 1 Dark Paladin. This is my replacement for Dragoon. Dark Paladin is actually pretty cool though, because he can negate any number of spell cards if you have a card in your hand to discard for the cost. Also, he gains 500 attack and defense for each dragon monster in either player's graveyards. So you can summon him and you can get the attack bonus off of your own dragon monster in the graveyard. So that can be very helpful. Next up, our instant fusion target. 1000 Eyes Restrict. So he can just steal one of your opponent's monsters, and then you can just sacrifice him to destroy it. Also, he's level 1 monster, so I can help with where Arf Thou and other plays that rely on level 1 monsters. For the synchros, double Buster Dragon, the most important card in the deck. It turns your opponent's monsters into dragon types. If you control a Buster Blader monster on your opponent's turn, you can equip one Destruction Sword card from your grave to one of your Buster Blader monsters. This is why it's so important to have Dragon Buster in your graveyard, because on your opponent's turn, you can just equip that monster from your graveyard to one of your Buster Blader monsters and lock your opponent out of the extra deck. Also, during your opponent's turn, if you control no Buster Blader, you can special summon one from your graveyard, which can be very handy. Next up, one Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. So this is a perfect card for this deck because you can go into it using a level 1 tuner and your Buster Dragon. 3200 attack. He has a quick effect negate, which can negate any card in the field, monster, spell, traps, whatever. And also when he inflicts damage, you can special summon a tuner from your grave. So it's just very good to go into. Boarload. Boarload is very good because you can go into him with your level 7s and your level 1s. And he's just good for negating. So you run plenty of link monsters in the deck, so you'll always have link material for him to use for his negates. One Scarlet Red Dragon Archfiend. So he's the same thing, level 8. You can destroy all your opponent's special summon monsters that have lower attack than him, and inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each monster destroyed. So it can be a very good way of getting rid of a board that's hard to clear. And finally, one Draco Berserker of the Tenyi. Whenever your opponent activates a monster effect, you just banish that monster. So if it destroys an effect monster and sends it to the grave, you can have him gain the attack of the destroyed effect monster, and then he can attack again. So that can be very good for closing out games. We run 2 Protector Whelp. So Protector Whelp, when he's link summoned, you can send one of your Destruction Sword cards from your deck to the grave, and then you can special summon a Buster Blader monster from your hand. So sending a card from deck to grave can be very good. You can set up your Dragon Buster. You can also send your Destruction Sword memories to the grave so that you can fusion summon from the grave very easily. Because your Buster Blader fusion monster cannot attack directly, if your Buster Blader monster has not attacked this turn, during the end of the battle phase, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to your monster's attack. So if your Buster Blader is up by like 5,000 because of all your dragon monsters your opponent controls, if you don't attack with that monster, it'll just inflict damage to your opponent equal to his attack. So that can be a very good way to close out games. Next up, one Halki Fiber Axe. Halki Fiber Axe is very good for this deck because it runs so many level 1 tuners. If you summon him, you can just get any one of your tuners from your deck to the field, which I usually use to get out my Dragon Buster, and then I link him and Dragon Buster off into Protector Whelp. One Nightmare Unicorn, just a good card to have to get rid of your opponent's card that is stopping your plays. And one Link Rebo. You run so many level 1s in the deck, you might as well run Link Rebo. Now into the combo. Okay, onto the combo here. It's a 2-card combo. We start with Buster Whelp and Tenyi Spirit Adhara. So there are many other ways to get these cards in your hand. You can have your where Arf Thou, you can have your Jack in hand, but as long as you have these 2 cards in your hand, you can do the combo. So to begin with, we will special summon Tenyi Spirit Adhara because we control no monsters. We will normal summon our Buster Whelp and activate its effect. We will search for our Prologue, and we'll just set that now. Next up, we will link into our Halki Fiber Axe. Use its effect to bring out your Dragon Buster. Next up, we will link these guys again to go into your Protector Whelp. We will use Protector Whelp's effect to send our Destruction Sword Flash to the graveyard. So at this point, we'll end our turn. During our opponent's standby phase, we will activate Prologue. So for cost of Prologue, we will send Destruction Sword Memories and Buster Blader. We will chain to Prologue if our opponent cannot negate it. We will chain Destruction Sword Memories. So we will banish it along with Buster Blader and Buster Whelp. To bring out from our extra deck, to bring out Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. Next up, Prologue will resolve, letting us bring out our Buster Dragon. So after that resolves, we can activate Buster Dragon's quick effect. We can attach one Destruction Sword monster from our grave to one of our Buster Blader monsters. We will attach Dragon Buster Destruction Sword to our Buster Blader. So that was 2 cards. All our opponent's monsters now are dragon types. our Buster Blader is negating all their effects and turning them into defense mode, and our Dragon Buster is preventing our opponent from summoning from the extra deck. So this is the Buster lock here. It's that's just from 2 cards. If you have 3 other cards in your hand, you can do other crazy shit as well. Okay, that's it for the deck profile. So Buster Blader is a very good deck, depending on the format. It was much better last format because Dragon Link was like fully top tier, but it's still a great deck to have. Dragon Link is still good. You don't even need your opponent to be using Dragon types. The main idea of this deck is to turn your opponent's monsters into Dragon types, and then take advantage of that. This deck can definitely be improved using combining it with stuff like Dogmatica, but I think this is a pretty good pure build. So yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments.